You can hear me though.
Check. The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor. Now you're muted. Ben Ark from BTC IoT.
Hello, hi all toilet roll holders.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue 1. Too many graphics and too many screens. Issue 1. Bitcoin halvening. What is the Bitcoin halvening? I've heard that the amount of Bitcoin given out every 10 minutes or so, the mining reward, is going to be reduced by half sometime in May. Can we push this thing back because of the coronavirus? Is this really a good idea right now? What is the Bitcoin halvening? Let's go to Ben from BTC IoT.
Yeah, I mean, I think we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. I think that the timing, for Bitcoin, it couldn't be more perfect because we've got central banks printing money like there's no tomorrow. The Fed's printing, I think it's $1 million a second, 60 million a minute, which is an astronomical amount of money to try and keep the economies moving and working, which I actually think is probably a good thing to do, rather than let things fail. But in those sort of when the fiat currency clearly is unpredictable and something you have no control over, to have something which is cryptographically predictable, and its supply will halve at a set point in time, and we know when that set point in time is, and it's happened before, and it's worked, and it'll happen again and again, and it'll ever increase the supply of Bitcoin which is going into the system. So we know we've got this deflation rate of Bitcoin going into the system. That's a very stable quality, which in very unstable times, although the price of Bitcoin has been fairly unstable, it'll really shine. And there's all these people as well sat at home on their computers. There's this, obviously there's all this corona stuff going on. Now we've all been glued to our news feeds reading about corona. But I think the 18th of May will probably be the time where most people are quarantined in. They've read all they can read on COVID. Most people have probably had COVID and they're still, just in lockdown while the countries deal with the crisis. And they'll be starting to follow regular normal news. On that news feed, you'll have the Bitcoin halvening, which is happening. And it's all about stability and having control over how the protocol works. And we know exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, which is the complete opposite to the way in which central banks function, which isn't a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing that central banks create more liquidity to keep the machine moving. If we just let everything fail, then society would be much worse off. Maybe, in 10 years' time, we'd have better markets, but in the medium term, it will get a bit Walking Dead. So it's just something which just has to happen currently at the moment, in the kind of economics we have. Maybe in the future we won't need that. Maybe in the future we'll have something a little bit more stable. Let's hope. I think the timing of the halvening couldn't be more perfect. We're going down to, what is it, 6.25, the reward. So that's the amount of Bitcoin which get given to miners when they actually, are able to hash through a block every 10 minutes. So I think originally it was a 50 and then 25, 12.5, which, I mean, the 12.5 hardening didn't seem to happen that long ago, but it's incredible. It's been, as long as it's been 4 years. So 6.25. It's just supply and demand. It's very simple mathematics. Supply and demand. There's less Bitcoin going into the system. There'll be more demand for Bitcoin. Particularly as kind of just an anchor to anchor things to, and by then as well, all this money which they're printing and pushing into the markets is going to start to have, people start to see the results of inflation. So and the money will be worth less. They'll be sat at home. They'll have a lot of time on the computer. So another timings for Bitcoin is perfect.
Dan Eve, 6.25 Bitcoin for your thoughts.
I think just the money printing situation is crazy. And although I've kind of been sort of reading up on Bitcoin and learning about monetary policy for since being into Bitcoin, I didn't really care until then. The crazy thing about the money printing is, and there's a few questions that popped up recently. Like one of them, why do we pay taxes when they can just print money? I mean, it really like makes your head pop. What about in terms of general world politics? What says that a country can't print a load of money and then go and print shitloads of money out of thin air and then go and buy a load of I don't know, say UK did that and then bought a load of American companies and then owned loads of America. Like, you can't just print money out of thin air. It makes my head explode the more I kind of think about these questions now that aren't just a case of, laughing at the fact that printer go burr and money's smashing out of them like nobody's business, but the fact that it's just the impact it has on people and devaluing the economy. So going back to devaluing the money, and again, what trust do you have in someone to back your money when they turn around and go, yeah, that's $1, mate. Yeah, that's $1. But we've got infinite money, and like, well, what the fuck? I mean, like, how does that? Head explodes. Anyway, back to the Bitcoin halving. So what is interesting is that recently, early March, we reached a peak of about just under 135 exahash. Now that kind of took a steep drop down to about 85 exahash, and it's sort of went just over 100, but now at about 90. So this could be the start of the fallout from miners going offline because of the Chinese sort of clamp down and not being able to get operations back up, or I don't know. There's lots of reasons for that potential drop, but it's going to be very I think turbulent on the way up to the halvening, because there will be a circulation of, unless if the hash rate does decrease, even though it decreases and it's still completely safe, the news rounds will be doing the death spiral stuff. We'll see loads of kind of pushing and shoving from the media, trying to, Bloomberg doing their classic influence the markets by, crazy ass headlines. So it's going to be a turbulent little run up to the halvening, but I'm optimistic. Plus, long term, it's just survived coronavirus. Jesus. I mean, as in, the rest of the market's dipped. Biggest drop since the Great Depression. For the US markets, and Bitcoin's bounced back. It's not dead at the moment. Like, it could have died. 700,000 times that people said it was going to die, but it's not dead.
Well, I agree with Ben that unlike anything planned by man or a central bank, the Bitcoin halvening is on a schedule, and it's something that you can depend on. As it says here at Bitcoin Magazine, every 210,000 blocks, there will be a halvening until the block reward is reduced to 1 Satoshi. And after that, there's no more halvening. So this is something you could plan, you can schedule around, no matter what's going on in the outside world, no matter how much we might want to stop it for coronavirus, or maybe take a break or have a circuit breaker, something like that. There's nothing like that for Bitcoin. So previously, it felt pretty good for the halvening, right? We'd seen the price of Bitcoin pretty much double from 6,000 up to 12,000, or even from 3 up to 12 or 10. So the price was well up so that the miners would continue being rewarded. One of the things you worry about right now, let's say it costs $6,000 to mine a Bitcoin, something in that range. If the halvening happens and they get half as much Bitcoin for every reward, that means that they're only making 3,000. It's going to cost more to mine the Bitcoin. So the price of Bitcoin must double to cover the miner's cost. I'm not sure if we're going to see that. Sometimes it takes 3 to 6 months after the halvening for the price to adjust upward. Sometimes the miners have money, they have supplies, they can live this out. Other times they go bankrupt. We've already seen some major adjustments to the Bitcoin hash rate. Continue to see those going in to the halvening. Exit question.
Blockstream. Oh, sorry, just very quickly. No, Adam Back said that I think he quoted Samson today that they've definitely got, they're they've got enough going and bills paid, etc., to be mining for the foreseeable. So kind of that's obviously pretty reassuring. I think hopefully a lot more miners now are building in a volatility in price and also electric costs a lot more than they used to, because of the the more technical it's become, the more grand scale it is, the more well thought out it is, and the more people start to think about how to hedge their bets on whether Bitcoin's going up or down, and they're going to be able to cover the costs.
And at this point, generally, when we're talking about miners, we're talking about large industry miners. We're not really talking about the people at home anymore. These are large scale. They have finances, they have books, they have plans, they've made estimates, they're paying the power bills regularly, they have good credit cards. This is not like the home miners. Let's move on to the exit question. What do you think the effect of the Bitcoin halvening will be on the Bitcoin price? Let's go to Ben from Wales. He's gone. Ben's gone. All right, Dan, you're the only one here. I'm going to you.
He's scared. He's scared of his price prediction. I've got to be optimistic because I've literally clinging on to hope now. This is like, come on, you've got to pull through this Bitcoin. But ultimately, I think that there's going to be a lot better financial planning this time for this halvening. And although we're going to see, like I said, some volatility, I think things will be on the up, especially as it's perfect, as Ben was saying, perfectly timed. Fed just printing money out of their ass, and so it seems like this is a perfect opportunity for Bitcoin to shine, as it did during the other bailouts 12 years or so ago.
I agree. I think that the market is perfect for it. It's surprisingly good setup for the Bitcoin halvening, especially to differentiate itself from the rest of the market. While the rest of the market is printing trillions of dollars and bailing out the economy, Bitcoin is actually reducing the amount of Bitcoin on the market pretty much by choice. It pretty much can't change. Let's ask the magical Bitcoin ball what the price of Bitcoin will be this time next week. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? My sources say no. Tough break from the ball there. The ball hath spoken. So I think we've lost Ben on this. Is Ben with us? No. We can go to this view. Oh, yeah. He dropped off. All right. Trouble on the internet over there. Let's move on to issue 2. Issue 2. And also be sure to like this show. Everyone at home, please push the like button. The like button is how YouTube recommends the show to other people. Right now we have 14 likes and 53 people watching. So let's try to get that ratio up. 50%, 75%. We can do it. Let's get more likes. We have 14 likes right now. So likes are free. Moving on to issue 2. $2 trillion stimulus and more. The Federal Reserve was back in the news this week with plans for...
There is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
An infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve. They're just going to print it and print it and print it. They're bailing out everybody. The cruise lines, the airlines, Boeing, the travel companies, the hotels, with special exemptions cut out allegedly for Trump companies to not receive money. A shocking move. The Democrats did it. And just everything. They're going to bail out the unemployed workers. They're going to bail out the small businesses with loans. Oh, boy. And just in general, they're printing more money than anyone has ever seen. Dan, Eve, is this good for Bitcoin?
Awesome for Bitcoin, and with any luck, if you got whatever stimulus package is agreed, if it's the one that people get sent that check and get continued checks for up until a year after coronavirus is gone, then let's hope most of those people realize that their dollars that they've been given by the government printed out of thin air should be better spent on Bitcoin. So that will pump the Bitcoin.
What you really want here is for the check to arrive just before the halvening, so you get one more chance at buying low, right? But really, no. People are going to be paying their rent with this. They don't just have extra money. Who's echoing?
I think it's Ben.
Oh, sorry.
All right, no worries. They don't just have extra money. They're going to have to pay rent. The stimulus is going to go to rent and food and immediate expenses. It's going to go to the top end of things. It's going to Boeing. It's going to the top airlines, the top hotels. Meanwhile, the only companies still doing good business right now are Amazon, Walmart, Costco, the big businesses. The small businesses are in real trouble. They're going to be wiped out. This thing is far from over. The other thing that's far from over is the money printing. They're going to print maybe 2 trillion more, maybe even another 2 trillion after that, a possible total of 6 trillion in the United States just alone. As we said before, if the halvening wasn't already perfectly timed, the basic idea of Bitcoin is perfectly timed up with this. While we did see Bitcoin follow the markets down in a complete crash, in a more sane environment like this, when people are looking at how much money they're actually printing and the effect that it might have and that it might cause hyperinflation, you might actually see people getting into Bitcoin as a potential way to avoid hyperinflation. Ben, are you back with us? Do you have a comment on the $2 trillion of money printing?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to comment in the other piece, but
well, do the other piece first, and we'll
no, it's relevant to this as well, and that's
right.
when we looked at the Bretton Woods Agreement, which happened after the Second World War, that happened because they needed a new monetary policy, because the old monetary policy had just collapsed in on itself because of the war, and they had to print a lot of money to keep war going so they could carry on fighting against each other. And that's why they had the Bretton Woods Agreement. That's why they had the gold-back green dollar as the world reserve currency between Dexter White and John Maynard Keynes. And that was an arranged meeting a few weeks before the end of the Second World War. So it was just coming to a close, and they're like, okay, so how's the new world economy going to look so we can have sustainable peace? And I think that question will be raised again, like what can we use for money so we can have the most sustained peace? That'll happen again because of all this money printing. It's going to have to be addressed. And it's a similar scale of crisis. Like, I'm not sure what it's like in the US, but here in the UK, with us all being quarantined on our houses, and with the sorts of things, with the sorts of measures which are happening, it feels wartime. It feels like, like it would have felt in the Second World War, during the air raids. So yeah, I think it will be a time where not just normal people will, look at where they can put their money and it would be safer, but also governments as well are going to look at something which can be more stable. And it's worth mentioning that I've said it before on the show, but John Maynard Keynes' original proposal of the Bretton Woods Agreement was the Bancor, which is a decentralized unit of account which countries could use to transact with each other, which would be apolitical. And it was Dexter White who said, well, no, we'll just use the dollar because the dollar's already 50% of the world's economy after the Second World War. So this is that same process will happen, and Bitcoin is there, so it's there for us.
Again, I just think it's a perfect contrast of Bitcoin and the state money, the endless printing versus the halvening of the units. It's just a perfect time. Couldn't be better. We'll have to see how it goes with everything else. Moving on to the exit question. Will the money printing work? Will they turn around the stock market? Ben from Wales.
Again, I mean, so fair weather surplus recycling is a good idea. So if you have boom bust cycles, it makes sense that you take some of the surplus from a boom, and then when you have a bust, you then try and alleviate the dip of the bust. That was the original plan. What we've got now is not fair weather surplus recycling. It's just turn on the printing machine and out it shoots. So we're so deep in this shit. Who knows? I don't know. It might just do nothing at all, and we'll just have a hyperinflation situation. I wouldn't be surprised.
Dan, Eve.
Well, this whole situation is with COVID's just it is getting crazy in terms of, obviously, you look at Italy's nearly 10,000 people that have passed on from coronavirus. So it seems like it's definitely outgunning the flu over there, and the repercussions of all these different systems being shut down. Oh, thank you. All these different systems being shut down, not food. We think about our food chain so entwined in the economy because there's so many different sort of layers to it. And if we continue shutting everything down for too long, one, we run the risk of even more businesses going under. And I think the negative effects of that would be like even much more broader monopolization from the existing companies that can survive, that are kind of the too big to fail. So you'll see a load of like, I don't know, corner shops and stuff going under. Sorry about the dogs. You see corner shops or whatever, local shops going under, and then Amazon picking up that business. And I think that that's going to have big implications for local businesses, being swarmed by all the competition from the big guns. Then also, obviously, the fact that people should get wise to it at some point. There's got to be some, I don't know, cover it on the news. It's never on the news. Why don't they ever cover it like, oh, look how crazy this fucking thing is. Look, like just the printer going. Like, why don't they mock it like that? Because I'm struggling to understand, why they're even able to do it. Why you're even able to print
infinite
money
amount of
like
cash
that.
at the Federal Reserve.
Exactly, and that baffles me, because even from another country's perspective, surely you could almost argue that it's kind of like an act of war to print money in order, because you could use that externally. You could then use your printed money to then influence the rest of the world. I'm not saying any of that happens in any shape or form, but it does leave it open to being abused, and then other countries can get one up on each other just by printing more money. I mean, what's to stop someone else before their currency drops just buying out a load of another country's stock and whatever? I don't know. It's crazy.
I agree. I think this stimulus won't be enough. It's only the first stimulus, and the main problem is going to be small businesses, especially restaurants in the United States. If you think about any corner restaurant, any diner that you eat at, they don't have enough money for next month's rent. If they go out with 1 month, 2 months, no rent, it's over. They may as well close down the entire business. And when we look at this plan of getting people back to work, which obviously isn't happening by Easter, when we look at this plan with any kind of a sensible plan, we need to have small businesses. We need to have restaurants still open, not completely out of business. And we also need people to eat there. So it's going to be a tough thing to get both those things going. Also, to remember the demand curve. People aren't going to be ready to go out and buy things. They're going to be afraid of the world. There's going to be this kind of social anxiety, this bubble syndrome after spending so much time in quarantine. Why would you want to go to a crowded restaurant? Why would you want to sit shoulder to shoulder to someone in a movie theater? These used to be absurd, germaphobe, social anxiety things. Now this is mainstream general society, and we're only in the first couple of days in our supposed quarantine here, and it's only going to get worse. Thanks to everybody in the chat for liking the show. We're up to about 25 likes. That's pretty good. We have 61 people watching now, so please give us a like below. Ben, any more thoughts on the bailouts and the stimulus plans?
No, it's just they're just trying to keep their head above water, and they're just trying to stop all these businesses from closing, and it's just gonna snowball, and there's nothing you can do about it. But then they will have to address monetary policy and in the future when we move away from COVID, and when we want stability and we want stable markets and we want apolitical money, which is one of the goals. Where can we look? And then we've got this thing which has just predictably halved its supply, which happened during the crisis. So it's good for Bitcoin.
Dan, Eve, are we all germaphobes now?
I don't know, because I've as a new parent, like I've been trying to tell myself like the whole time, right, you can't be one of those parents that like wipes everything, and because the kid's never going to experience germs. But at the same time, now I'm like literally, it's like whenever me and my girlfriend go anywhere, it's like, what's it called when they're the thing with the pole and the icing thing? What's it called? Curling. Yeah, we're curling, like polishing the surfaces. But I think once this is done, I'm going to go back to normal. Really, these things are once in a lifetime, once in a generation type events, And really, because of the shit it's caused, I think that there's going to be a lot more preparations put in place. If it happens next time, there's going to be procedures. It's like, we've had almost, not in any way is this a near miss, because there's been lots of lives lost, and that's awful. But at the same time, it's not been that detrimental that it's fingers crossed, that it's completely fucked everything, and that it's decimated Earth and we're all dead. We've got a chance to grow and survive and beat this together.
So we're not 12 monkeys just yet, maybe 9 monkeys, just a couple monkeys. Moving on. Did you know the World Crypto Network has its own audio podcast? You can listen to audio versions of this and other shows on iTunes and anywhere else where you listen to podcasts, even on Spotify. Check out the World Crypto Network audio podcast today. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Issue 3, Bojo, sick. Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, is sick with the coronavirus. Boris had been putting a good face on the coronavirus, continuing to visit hospitals and shake hands with people, even people who may have the coronavirus. Naturally, Boris Johnson developed the coronavirus. So far, he claims he has a light case, but it's more likely that the symptoms just haven't set in yet. What do you guys think? Will this teach Boris Johnson empathy? Will he understand what it's like to be the normal people? Will this kind of idea of even Tom Hanks, even Boris Johnson, even actors and celebrities, athletes, anyone can get this disease, anyone can be taken down by it? Will we see a new era of humble Boris and humble politicians? Let's go to Dan Eve.
I wonder if anyone's done a little study whilst everyone's looking at the analytics, all these connections of people getting, picking up coronavirus and how they've passed it on. I wonder if anyone's done any analytics or is prepared to do some on like the 6 degrees of separation, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, and what that actually is with coronavirus. So if it's that well, have they? Oh, wicked.
Yeah, so there's the interesting one is on spread. So when people say it's just a flu strain, so the flu, when you have the flu, you typically pass it on to 1.3 people. Coronavirus is very, very contagious. So in a normal circumstance without quarantines and things, people are typically transmitting to 3 people. So it doesn't sound like very much, 1.3 to 3. But so an example is, so 10 cycles in, so 1.3 people give it to 1.3 people, and then those 1.3 people give it to 1, and so on and so on and so on. After 10 cycles in, the flu, you've given it to like 14 people. With coronavirus, after 10 cycles in, you've been responsible for 59,000 infections. So it scales up really exponentially just by having you been able to infect those extra 1.7 people.
And with a lot of the political cases in the U.S., like Dan was saying, they have traced it back. There was this conservative political conference where one guy had it and he gave it to a bunch of other guys, and Ted Cruz might have gotten it from there. Rand Paul might have gotten it from there. He might have infected Romney. All kinds of these connections. It really does get down to the personal nature, and they do try to map it all out. Go ahead, Dan.
I mean, I think like Boris has only just got it, so he's had it for like a day. So he's got very mild symptoms. I think I've had it for the past 8 days. And I wouldn't say, because I've had just the persistent cough, but I haven't really had a temperature. I had like a day where I felt like ill, so I was in bed a day and a half. But the rest of the family have also been ill. My son, he's had 5 days of like 39 to 40 C temperatures, which is really hard. Like you're supposed to phone medical services when they hit past 39.6 or whatever it is. So it's a really high temperature, but we managed to keep it down with paracetamols. And today's the first day where he's been at 37 degrees. And my daughter's also had just a dry cough, but my son in particular, he's had the typical symptoms. He's had the high temperature, he's got the unproductive cough, he's got the tight chest, all that stuff. I've just had the chest and the cough, but it really, really is horrible, like shortness of breath. I had about 3 or 4 days ago. It's quite I've never been asthmatic or anything, so I've never had that experience before of not being able to catch my breath, you know. But it is quite scary, particularly when you know in the context it's in, and you hear people developing pneumonia after 9-10 days of having relatively mild symptoms. I'm not even at 9-10 days yet. So Boris is only a day in. I think what will happen though, I mean, a lot of these politicians and prime ministers and presidents, whatever, they're not healthy people. They don't get much sleep. You know, look at Obama and look how much he aged in the short period of time he was actually in office. They're not healthy people. They don't sleep. They don't really eat so well, and there's a lot of rich food going to a lot of dinners and so on. So one of them will die. I think Boris just getting it
Brutal.
now. Well, no, I mean one of them's going to die, and that's good. But
One will die.
all
It's not threat.
the other politicians, all the other people who are in control. That's really going to. I mean, a lot of them are already. They understand the urgency of the situation, but someone like Trump, for example, I don't think he really understands how dangerous this virus is. And if a man of his age and his condition gets it, then you know there's a good chance he can die. So when you see those US press conferences, like 2 hour, is that usual? These 2 hour like press conferences, it's bizarre. Like surely
it's not usual at all. He's been using it as a campaign rally because he can't have the normal campaign rallies. He even wears the hats, the advertisements for his political things in the middle of a pandemic press conference. Yeah.
Like some sort of evangelical cult leader, like because they have these big long preachy sermons, don't they? It feels like that almost, you know. But anyway, there's a whole bunch of people who are at-risk people, you know, relatively old, tightly packed together in a room full of lots of people journalists who are out and about. So I mean, that thing's a time bomb. It's really, really, you know. So anyway, but no, I mean, it's Boris is the first international leader to get it, but I think one of them will die, and then that'll really scare the rest of them into action. What was the
Let's go back over to Dan. Dan, more on Boris being sick.
Well, I was just going to say, it brings it, like Ben said, it brings it home to people that not everyone's not invincible, but not everyone is immune to it. Obviously, immune is being a good word, or immune to getting it, and hopefully that will maybe reduce some of the criticism now that he's actually got it. Because there's obviously he's done some bad, you know, he could have handled stuff better. But there's a lot of negativity around it. Instead of trying to, you know, group together, and there's some good things that happen, like the NHS volunteer sign up thing was like 500,000 volunteers. So there's some good stuff happening, and maybe the negativity will drop a bit now because Boris has got it. So they're no longer can they say, oh, he doesn't care about someone having it, or he doesn't care about me, and so there might be a bit less of that and a bit more banding together, like the nice thing they did.
I've been pleasantly surprised. I mean, I'm obviously not a Tory, you know, but and I'm not the biggest fan of Boris Johnson, for example. But I actually think he's stepped up and he's putting in measures which are proportional to the threat. How they're enforced is the question.
Lately is after they stopped herd immunity. And after they allegedly tried herd immunity after modeling it after the wrong disease with a different hospital rate. I was after a series of horrible mistakes. I mean,
but every government's made mistakes. Like every government,
but issue 4. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. But yes,
no, we were by far the most cavalier with our policy on trying to get on containment of coronavirus, and it was a really bad policy. But it was a big U-turn, and now we're the other direction, and we're people are quarantined and they're staying at home. And he's had this, you know, he's one of those sort of prime ministers who's always wanted to be a prime minister. He's got this idea of destiny, and he reads the classics, you know. And I think that my worry was when he got into power that he was going to be kind of a warmonger. You know, he quite craved the excitement of like a Churchill type scenario. But he can have that. He can have his time in the limelight. He can be productive, be good, and be good for people's morale and keep the country moving without having to wage war, just fighting, you know, people dying, fighting this virus. So So I've actually been pleasantly surprised by the U-turn, and then also by some of his more recent work. So, you know, and I also think as well, like the UK Olympics came straight after the Chinese Olympics, and we couldn't compete with the Chinese when it came to money, the amount of money spent on it. But the way in which we did compete is we had a lot of volunteering and a lot of people volunteered to help sort of the Olympics. It was a big kind of coming together of the UK, and it's not usually my cup of tea, like sports, spectator sports, all that sort of stuff. But he did a good job on that, and he kind of like pioneered that way of approaching the Olympics. So it's very much from his idea. So if you do the same with coronavirus, you know, I don't care who's there as long as they're doing they're putting people at ease and that, I don't know, they're making good policies. And he's also a dictator. So, you know, he's got the power of a dictator. He can do whatever he wants. So if he's being a good guy and he's, you know, it's better than having an evil dictator. So, yeah.
Well,
I like to think of an analogy of, sorry, Tom.
I want to talk for a while. As someone watching this from the U.S., the obvious comparison is that what if Trump was sick? And the idea is that maybe, you know, certainly we don't want him to be sick. He's an older man. It's not a good thing, but he might become more humble on the other side. He might understand what other people are going through, the horrors of having a ventilator tube shoved down your throat, this not being able to breathe thing that the people talk about, the loss of smell, the cough, all of this. Maybe it would bring him down. And that's what, and in a positive way, though, bring him down to earth, where he can then help other people and really commit to this thing. So hopefully Boris Johnson, the same thing, that he's going to turn it around. He's going to be much more responsive. And maybe he'll be a leader on this. Maybe it'll be a turning point. Maybe it'll be a positive thing. Go ahead, Dan, more on this.
So I was going to say, like, the analogy I suddenly thought of things is like how Brits, when they go on holiday and like the first day, and I always do it as well, but I'm even worse because I'm half Maltese, so I'm like, my skin's like, it goes brown and nice, but instead I'm like overconfident, and then the next couple of days you just basically got to lie on your front or lie on your back with like cucumber, aloe vera, until you can do it again. And that's kind of, I think, that resilience, the initial resilience until you get burnt, is the same thing that's happened with the response to coronavirus. It's that, let's all just chug on, you know, we're all good, bish bash bosh, and then like, oh shit, we've reevaluated things and everyone's fucked. But I have my own way out of this, you see, because in this day and age where there's lots of gender imbalances still, we are seeing the latest one with the coronavirus, which is, I think it's the male to female ratio is 70% male and 30% female mortality, which is terrible. So I'm not taking my chances. So from now on, I'm female.
That'll work.
I can do that.
That's an incredibly discriminatory virus too. That's very wrong of the virus to choose that way.
I like that ratio because and hopefully now we can put the whole man flu thing to rest. We can say, look, we do actually suffer worse than women when it comes to illness and viruses. So, yeah.
Man flu.
I agree with Dan. I think Boris was kind of being a buffoon before, going around shaking people's hands, saying it was nothing. There's a lot of people that have this bravado, this confidence. They don't have any other way of acting. So hopefully this will be a lesson to everyone that's like that you do have to take it seriously, even if you're a tough guy, even if you're in good health or whatever you're calling yourself. Like, you can get this thing. It can take you down. I mean, so far he's saying he has light symptoms and this kind of thing. It kind of seems, I don't really like it. It seems like he's putting people on. I'd prefer if he was, you know, up there like Ben and he was coughing and he looked sick and he was like, yeah, this thing's affected me. It's real. If he was doing a day by day thing, we'll watch. I don't know if he's going to show the real side of this sickness or if he's going to give us kind of a Hollywood version of it. But we'll have to see.
It'd be so funny. It'd be so funny if he does a poor Jenny. Is it poor Jenny? And she just like, they're on a massive Zoom video call. Like, imagine he's doing the thing. He's like, yes, I'm just at home. I'm feeling not so bad. Yes, but I'm getting by. And then they go back to the studio and he just trundles off to the
already in the one video he released, he was already saying how technology was going to allow him to work from home. And he didn't seem to think, like, you know how when you're sick, you can't really think properly and you get really tired. You have all these things happen to you. He was like, oh, I'm going to be fine. I've got a computer and I'm going to work from home. And I was like, dude, you're going to get sick. Like you're a human like everyone else, right? I mean, we're all like that. I mean, I don't want to, no one wants this, but at the very least, you're going to get some kind of a flu, some kind of a virus. You're going to be down for a while, PM or not. So yeah, no, it was pretty surprising to see him still so strong about it, but he's got a couple days still, right? So let's move on to the exit question. Exit question: will celebrities continue to get this? What would be the most moving celebrity? I don't know, something like that. Something about celebrities. Let's go to Ben first. Ben, name a celebrity. What's important on this? Go ahead, Ben.
I don't really know, to be honest. I don't really know any celebrities. I don't think.
Like a pop, like just pick a field. Do you think an
Tone
actor,
Vays,
pop star?
celebrity.
Hey, Tone Vays
Tone
travels a
Vays.
lot.
Yeah.
That could be and that could teach a lot of people a lesson. I think Adam Meister's been denying this pretty hard. He's been saying that it's not real and so on and so forth. So as much as I don't wish it on him, being out there in the public's pretty easy.
Talking of the Bitcoin celebs, then Jimmy Song, because the crap he puts on Twitter drives me nuts. About, oh, it's awful, like this denialism. Like you can't, if you want to deny that you don't think that corona is such a bad thing, then fair enough, that's fair. But do it in a way which isn't going to encourage people to put themselves in harm. Like if he has like some denialism, COVID, he's toned it down a bit, but the past month he's had a whole bunch of tweets which have hit like 400 likes. Some of those people will be encouraged just a little bit more to be a bit more cavalier with their infecting themselves or infecting other people. And like I was saying before on that statistic, it's a big number, the potential for someone to be able to infect. So yeah, some of those Bitcoiners who are putting out the denialism crap just because it like makes their world economic view or whatever. I don't care.
I would agree with that. I say, and Andreas had a great tweet about Schadenfreude, that all the kind of people who denied the virus, Rand Paul, Boris Johnson, all these kind of people, as it turns out, are the people getting the virus. So in the same way, a lot of these people denying the severity or saying it's not serious, perhaps if they got it, they would learn the lesson, they'd speak about it, they could come to some understanding, and we could have new information on that. Dan, what about you? Britney Spears, famous pop stars, who are you looking to get infected with the virus, or what would be the biggest impact? Go ahead, Dan.
I hope that some of the celebrities that are covered in this are watching, but I'd like to say a massive thank you to anyone that was involved in the singing Imagine or the no makeup selfie, because you're a fucking hero. That's all I've got to say. Sorry.
That was a pretty tone deaf singing of Imagine. Yes, all the rich houses. Madonna,
it's crazy.
Madonna,
they could at least like throw
bathtub.
some money in or something.
It wasn't a good look. And also, poor Imagine. Why do we have to do that to John Lennon? This is a song pretty much about war. This is an anti-war song.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have anything to do with disease.
He was the same. He was sat in his like £10 million house.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good look. The white piano, the white fancy look was a pretty rich look. Yeah.
Yeah, they all do it. They all do it. And Corbyn with his multi-millions and diving through the money like Scrooge Duck.
What I've liked seeing at home is the different backdrops on CNBC. What the different late night hosts have done. Stephen Colbert sticking with the suit. Seth Meyers, it's been pretty interesting. He's wearing like a flannel shirt. He doesn't have the same gravitas, and he has a bookcase behind him. But it's just, how do they stack the books? How do they do the posters? There's this guy on CNBC. He's got these great Grateful Dead posters, 60s rock stuff, all the other things, and also to see how not good at it they are, how they're not prepared, how their video skips, how their lighting sucks. I predict next time they're all going to have little home studios. They're all going to be prepared for this. They're going to assume that this could happen again, whereas this time we're really getting to see them at their most true and their most honest, at least for those guys. Do you guys have that in the UK? Are they also showing their homes?
Yeah, we have the exact same thing. We've got their homes in the background, and it's just kind of a leveler. Like they're like regular normal YouTubers, when you're watching the news on YouTube and the news anchor, there's always someone you've seen on the telly before. But it just looks like well, like a less professional version of your setup, you know. So yeah, it's a great leveler.
They're also
Because
saying
obviously it
in
does
the
give them gravitas.
they're also saying in
that.
the chat that another Bitcoin celeb, Safedine, has been speaking out against the virus, perhaps even saying that it's a hoax in general, and that the people are
Well, I
all
mean,
it's all psychosomatic.
just,
You're going to the hospital. It's a mass delusion, I believe, is his side. Yeah.
he blocked me so long ago. I haven't had any to listen to any of his crap. So, but no, I can imagine, and it's all people who have. Okay, fair enough. Like, I mean, obviously, you know, all leftiness aside, from my side, like those people, they have a certain economic worldview, and in order for their economic worldview to make complete easy sense, it helps if there's no such thing as climate change, there's no such thing as pandemics, which people need to work on together, and that's okay. But it just means that like their economic worldview has to be a little bit more complicated, and that's not a bad thing. Like if they have to think, you know, wild cards through a little bit more, but rather than just deny it, like just think of actual solutions. Yeah, those guys.
It's been very difficult to have such a large scale pandemic that really responds only to a large government, to a central government, and to have these other people who deny the central government. It's caused a cognitive dissonance in their head. I'm not sure they're able to get by. I like that Safe Team Bitcoin Standard book, but he never wants to interview with us. We asked him twice at 2 consecutive Tone Cons, and both times he was too busy or didn't know who we were or something. So I don't know. Dan,
Is that Dominic Frisby one? Bitcoin, what is the future? Bitcoin, the future of money.
Apparently that book is very
original.
similar. Yeah, that's what I've heard. There's a lot of similarities there.
I think even Tone mentioned it at the Transylvania Con, and on like introduced him or something. It was like, oh, is that like the Dominic Frisby?
By the way, on that Dominic Frisby has a very, very, very good book on tax. You should all read, called
yes. I started. Yeah.
Say the name again, Ben. What's the name?
Daylight Robbery by Dominic Frisby.
All right.
He wrote the original Bitcoin Standard.
Yeah, and there's Dominic Frisby has another book which I started but I didn't finish. Is really good. It's like why we don't need government. But yeah, check it out. Something about not needing government. But Dominic Frisby, you'll find it.
Probably not too good today, but maybe other days. Let's move on to issue 4. Issue 4. Why is Germany's coronavirus death rate lower than other countries? Let's go to Ben from Wales. Why is Germany doing so well as the Asian countries that all wear masks? Why are they successful when we are not?
The Germans are a complete anomaly to me. I've been to plenty of German Bitcoin related conferences and hung out with plenty of Germans, and like normal Bitcoiners, they're quite frail looking and you know, we're quite withdrawn and we spend too much time indoors and don't get enough exercise. Even though the big macho men like Seyfedin, you know, interesting to meet them in real life. These German Bitcoiners though, they're ginormous. They're like gods, and they just seem to drink loads of beer and eat not particularly healthy food, but they still look fantastic. So I don't know why, and because obviously it's not a genetic thing, like, but they just maybe it's the saunas, they like saunaing quite a lot. And the beer is quite light, so maybe it's very hydrating, but I have no idea why the German stats are a complete anomaly to me. They've got, I think they've got the same amount of cases as like France or Spain or something, like a big, you know, a number of cases, but their death percentage is very, very small. The Germans tried to tell me that it was because they don't test the dead or something, but that's bollocks. This is what I think it may be, is they have a lot of ICU units. So I think they have 20, like pre-corona, like 20 ICU units per 1,000 people, whereas I think we in the UK have like 3. So that's going to make a big impact on it. But yeah, these Germans, crazy. God knows. And even the you know, dorky Bitcoiner Germans are fantastic looking. I just don't understand it.
Dan, Eve, do you have a similar love for all things German?
I do. I was over there at so I've just had a really good idea for a tweet. So quick shill, if you want to see what this funny meme is that I've just thought up, and I'm going to post in a bit. I'm at Cryptopoly on Twitter. But Germany's awesome. Yeah, we stayed in Bavaria for New Year's Eve, and it's just everything seems so much more efficient. They have, like, in Europe, it's really weird. Like, Ben might know this. In the UK, we got roads, but in Europe and seemingly every other country on earth, they got flat roads. And in Germany, like, the roads are really flat, and they're just nice. You don't just sit along going, and yeah, I love Germany. Yeah, so I'd even think I'd love to move out there, actually, in like Bavaria, somewhere out there. It's like country-esque. But I think I saw the same thing that you did, Ben, about the number of beds per per person per capita or whatever. And I think England's actually really low. Now we're starting to lean a lot more on the private sector. But of course, what this does do is, I mean, it's helping out in the time of need. But one, it highlights a massive risk, and that we've got, like, sort of beds to go around and equipment. But also that the private sector is making an absolute shit ton of money off of the government right now. So not only do we not have those services, we're going to be paying through the nose for them because it's emergency style. And so, yeah, it's just going to add to all the repercussions that are just rippling around, and going to make everything a bit topsy-turvy over the next.
Their healthcare system is like, it's not, so it's universal healthcare, but it's accessed through social insurance policy. It's the same as South Korea, but similar to South Korea. So they do have quite a lot of private. So they have, like, private hospitals, but they're accessed through a social healthcare insurance policy thing. So I don't know how they do it, but it isn't. So it is kind of universal, but it's also got a lot of good sort of aspects of the private sector in there. But I think where the kind of the parts of the private, markets we've got in our NHS, I think the NHS just gets fleeced, basically. But we kind of take the bad parts of the private sector and the bad parts of the social sector and make it. I think they do the opposite. They have the best of both. So, but South Korea's the same, and they've had similar good results, with helping treating corona.
I agree with the guests. I think it's a stereotype, but the German society seemed very orderly when I visited there. When I went to Rome, they had a lot of trash cans that were overflowing, where people just kept putting the trash there, and it just kept piling up, and no one was coming to pick it up. Mir told me that's only in Rome and in the southern parts where they live in Lombard is very nice. But in Germany, I didn't see any trash anywhere. It was all picked up. It just seemed like a very organized and orderly society where they're going to take care of people, where they're going to follow the rules. And when it was time to quarantine, I imagine they quarantined. But this is going to take more study. We need to know why Germany did so well as why South Korea, Japan, the rest of Asia, likely mask culture, following rules, preparedness, maybe good leaders. I don't know what it is, but we need to figure this out because we need this in our society. Going on to the exit question. I don't know the exit question. Go ahead, Ben.
Germany, great. Go there. I mean, if you haven't been there, go there. Drive around on the roads, on the amazing roads. Autobahn, Jesus Christ! Like,
it's amazing.
Have so much fun, and you can go any speed you want, and it all works perfectly. Go on a train. It's like first class. The train. It's just it's fantastic. But no, I think rule maybe the rule thing. Maybe they don't mind following rules. They actually quite enjoy following rules, and just doing things properly, and doing things well. Whereas we kind of fight against that here. I think we don't like doing things properly. We're a right mess. So, but yeah, no, it's. I think Thomas was right, because South Korea is similar and Japan's similar. Like they don't. Germans. Someone once told me who lived in Munich when they worked. I don't know if it's not really prejudiced. I don't think thing to say. There was my neighbor who used to work in Munich, and he said that Germans, they won't do something unless there's a rule saying they can do it, and then the Brits, they'll do something unless there's a rule saying they can't do it. So yeah,
that does change things. Dan, where in Germany should people visit?
So I've been to Heidelberg. That's a really nice place. And where did I go? Oh God, I can't remember the name. It's in Bavaria, which is like southeast-ish. But just go anywhere. It's amazing. Like, it's really cool. Like Germany, Austria, Switzerland, basically all of Europe's pretty cool. So yeah,
visit
Europe. Not now, maybe not now. Don't go out anywhere because you're probably not allowed. So and don't blame it on me if you do and you forget you're not allowed.
Plus, all the museums are closed. Everything's closed right now. There's no reason to go anywhere. But yeah, I agree. So far, Germany's very beautiful. Looked very green. I checked out Ravensburg. That was pretty cool. Kind of a smaller town. Has cool castles. Also, the museums. Museum Island in Berlin. The German Historical Museum. That's a good one. And I'm still working on my German on Duolingo. So everyone should check that out. I think we're heading towards the end of the show. I was just going to show the donation code. If you'd like to donate now, we're collecting Bitcoin in a goal to raise $1 million whenever that amount of Bitcoin is worth $1 million. So far, we have 33 donations. You can go ahead and donate now with Bitcoin or Lightning. Scan the QR code on your screen. Thanks so much for supporting the show. Now we'll go on to predictions or story of the week. Dan Eve, the computer hath chosen you. You're on the spot for a prediction or a story of the week.
My prediction is that I think that Italy, by the end of next week, this is a sensible one and it's optimistic. I think that by the end of by this time next week, Italy would be over their peak. I also predict that there will be an announcement of a therapeutic method that will significantly reduce the amount of people being on ventilators. Bold predictions.
Some good news for a change. Ben Ark, your prediction or a story of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that there'll be more reports and more studies concluding that there are lots of asymptomatic people out there. But currently, it's very hard. You can't collect the data because there isn't a way of measuring unless you tested them. Just doing blanket testing is the only way you can get the actual data. So they are talking about an antibody test. So people like me, for example, I can actually test to make sure that I've actually had coronavirus and not just man flu. So I predict that will happen. There'll be an antibody test, and that'll be good, and it'll give us better data. I think that's going into trials next week, so that'll be really useful for people. I also predict that there'll be a lot more. So I've been working with a couple of groups on DIY, using our 3D printers and all the things we have access to try and develop like PPE equipment, which is actually useful to people. Maybe not as good as the it's when you see Northern Italy running out of equipment and them having to turn people away. My philosophy is that a DIY ventilator is better than no ventilator. If you're dying and you're just going to die, so you might as well give it a go. So I've been working on, I call it the Ghetto Ventilator. So it's like a ventilator you can make in a ghetto just from like car parts and things. It's very, very hard because obviously, I mean, this is just a non-invasive ventilator so far. So it will just deliver oxygen and air and using pressure to, move your lungs, not putting any pipes in. Then maybe someone can take it. But basically, I'm seeing a lot of building and development going on, which is very easy to be critical of because you can say, well, it's not as good as this, the N65 masks or whatever. But I think it's important that people build and develop and experiment with these things because now, lo and behold, we have got a couple of face masks, for example, 3D printed face masks, which are pretty good. They're sort of 90% there. So maybe not perfect for first world situations, but if all these people with 3D printers can start printing pretty good masks and sending them to people who need them, then that's not a particularly bad thing. And then if we can have some open source ventilators, because a lot of this medical equipment is quite expensive. I know my university, Swansea University, is also in South Wales. They're doing some excellent work in doing outreach to makers and builders to try and get them to utilize their home fabrication stuff to develop equipment. So I think that there's going to be more of that in the news of people chipping in and developing equipment for medical use.
Oh, Ben, did the one that you printed, did that have a filter built into it, or was that a sort of place or store for you to put filters in?
Yeah, there's a space to put filters in. It's actually developed by a doctor, which is what you need really. And a lot of people were trying to, because obviously you need a very airtight seal, and a lot of people were trying to achieve that by having adjustable masks, which just didn't really work. Whereas he's just done it on site. He just does like 6 different sizes for this mask. And at the point I printed the one which I thought was probably my size, and it's airtight. It's a real airtight seal. Funnily enough, vacuum cleaner bags. A lot of vacuum cleaner bags are very good at keeping out, because I think coronavirus is like really small. It's like 2 microns or something, or 0.2 microns, or so it can get through tiny little holes in filter paper or whatever. So you need the right type of filter, which is why they don't want people to feel that they're not transmitting the coronavirus through a face mask, and then they are actually transmitting the virus. So this is why it's important to be vigilant and not just like print off any old mask and use any old material. But the one in which I tweeted out, and I've made a couple of, it's good. It works pretty well. It's not perfect, but it's like maybe 80% there. But over the next coming weeks, they will become perfect, because there's a lot of people like in our group. So I set up a group a couple of weeks ago, and we got like 35 people now, and we got all sorts, like, engineers, biomedical people, like doctors, and a lot of anaesthetists. So, and they're on the front line, obviously. No, it's really quite inspiring, but also very worth being vigilant and making sure that you're not encouraging people to wear or use equipment which isn't going to work, or is going to put them in more harm. But for me, it's more that, like, we're lucky because we've got access to medical equipment, and medical services, which are going to be under strain for sure. But in a lot of countries, there's no access, in some slum, in wherever. So they're going to have to build their own equipment to try and help alleviate some of the symptoms of pneumonia or whatever. So hopefully there'll be more work and more press on those efforts which are being made, and there'll be also more good designs which people can actually use and print out and are functional.
And this is also only the early days of 3D printers. Most people don't have a 3D printer in their house. They're not very complicated yet. In the future, we could see 3D printers maybe printing whole ventilators, or maybe someday biological 3D printers. You could just print the vaccine at home. It just prints your food. It prints your vaccines. It does everything. It's biological printer.
Prints your own virus.
Prints your own virus. Prints your own cure. It's got it all. You can play God with our biological 3D printer. But my story of the week is I had a great time hanging out with you guys, doing little morning talk shows. We've been getting a lot of good phone calls. People are sharing their stories, telling, that they have it or they don't have it. They're worried about it, what they think about this or that, the taxes, the politics. We've been having a lot of great conversations. So if you want to join us every morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time until about 11 a.m., right here on the World Crypto Network. So be sure to subscribe down below. Hit the bell for notifications. Thanks for giving us a thumbs up. We got about 39 thumbs up. 56 people are watching now. So thanks so much for watching. And join us on those talk shows. We've also got a whole bunch of them that you can watch if you want to catch up on the back episodes. A lot of good callers. Anything else we want to say, you guys, tonight?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan. You have something to say? Go ahead.
Yeah, can you just go quickly to because no one could be asked to go and look at my Twitter profile. Can you just go quickly because I posted my little meme? Hopefully you like it.
We just can't go that quickly. What do you want?
Like lightning.
Stocks.
Here we go.
See if I spelled it right. All right, here we go.
There it is. There it is.
Romania.
Wait for it. Hopefully this is going to be worth the wait.
No,
not that one.
Oh, not that one? I want to show that one. Oh. There you go. Safety,
Yeah.
unsafety.
Yeah, I just did it now.
So there you go.
I do have one with a builder's hat that I never posted. One with a builder's hat. The safety without.
Well, there you go. There are the two safeties. So we're going to be back again tomorrow morning doing more of the talk show, so you guys can join us. It's going to be fun, so join us in the chat. Stay with us. We've been doing them all week. We're going to try to keep going. And looks like Ben's coughing, Dan's coughing. They're all coughing. But thanks so much to everybody for joining us. Until next time, bye-bye.